there is a particular tiredness that comes from wanting something too well. Not from laziness, from the opposite, from years of arranging, planning, steering, from the quiet, full-time labour of trying to make life turn out the way you have decided it must. You know exactly how it is supposed to look, the relationship, the moment of arrival, the version of yourself who finally gets to rest. You can see it so clearly, and the clearer it gets, the further away it seems to drift. So you grip harder, you tighten the plan, you row against the current with everything you have, certain that if you only pull hard enough, the water will finally carry you where you meant to go. And underneath the effort, there is a thought you rarely say out loud. That life is something happening to you slightly wrong. That reality keeps missing its cue. That if the world would just cooperate, just follow the script you have written for it, you could finally relax. This is not a lecture about lowering your standards. It is not a lesson in wanting less. It is something stranger and older, a look at why the wanting itself, held in a closed fist, becomes the thing that keeps the wanted at bay. Why the harder you steer the river, the more it fights you. And what happens in the quiet moment, you finally take your hands off the water. Not the story of a dream you failed to reach. The story of a hand so busy grasping that it could not receive. No child begins by trying to control the river. A child begins by floating on it. Look at how a young boy meets a day. He does not schedule his joy. He does not manage the afternoon. Something catches his eye, and he turns toward it. Whole, he wants without a plan for the wanting. He is, without knowing the word for it, in the flow. And then, somewhere, the water changes. A boy sets a small paper boat on a stream, a boat carrying everything he loves, and watches the current take it somewhere he did not want it to go. Maybe a promise breaks. Maybe he reaches for something with his whole open heart, and it is not there when his hand arrives. Maybe he learns, in a single afternoon or across 1,000 quiet ones, that the world will not simply hand you what you love, and that wanting openly is a way of getting hurt. So the boy makes a discovery that feels like wisdom. If I cannot trust the river, I will command it. If the current took what I loved, I will build walls to hold the water still. I will decide in advance exactly how things must go, and I will bend my whole life to enforcing it. Then nothing can surprise me, then nothing can be taken. Understand what happened here. This was not a character flaw, it was intelligence. A small mind, having felt the sting of a world that would not obey, built the one tool that promised safety, the grip, the plan, the refusal to leave anything to chance, because chance had already cost him. But the boy who dams the stream becomes the man who cannot feel the current. The walls that held the water still also stopped it from moving. And a river that cannot move is no longer a river. It is a held breath. By the time he is grown, the grip has learned 100 disguises. The expectation braided into every hope. The disappointment waiting, pre-installed, inside every plan. The inability to enjoy what is here because his eyes are fixed on the version of here that has not arrived yet. He is not doing this because he is ungrateful. He is doing this because long ago a boy decided that to stop steering was to be swept away. Here is the law the grip has never understood. Alan Watts spent his life pointing at a single Taoist idea, the one the Chinese called Wu Wei. It is usually translated as non-doing, but that is misleading. It does not mean doing nothing. It means acting the way water acts. Watts loved to say that you cannot push a river. The water is already going. All your pushing does is exhaust you and muddy the very flow you were trying to hurry. The river does not arrive at the sea by force. It arrives by yielding to every stone, going around what it cannot go through, and never once stopping to insist the landscape be other than it is. This is the thing the controlling mind cannot hear. There is a difference between effort and force. The river makes tremendous effort. It simply makes no force. It does not clench. And so it gets, everywhere, patiently, inevitably, while the dam stands rigid and cracks. Carl Jung saw the same current running through the human soul. He said that the ego, the small managing I, the one who plans and grips and keeps the map, is not the true centre of a person. There is something larger, which he called the self, the deep organising intelligence of the whole psyche, that knows where a life is trying to go far better than the ego ever could. And individuation, the slow work of becoming whole, does not happen when the ego finally forces its plan through. It happens when the ego stops seizing the wheel and learns, at last, to listen to the current underneath it. The ego is a good servant and a terrible master. It was never meant to steer the river. It was meant to raise the sail. Krishnamurti cut even closer. He said that expectation is the death of the living moment. To expect is to arrive at now with a demand already in your hands, a picture of how this was supposed to be, and to measure the living thing in front of you against a ghost. And you cannot love a ghost, and you cannot love through one. The person who expects is never actually here. He is comparing here to the elsewhere in his mind, and finding here guilty. And then there is the strange, precise teaching of Neville Goddard, who spoke of the inner desire directly. Neville said the way to your longing is not to strive toward it, but to assume it, to live from the feeling of the wish already fulfilled, and then, and this is the part everyone forgets, to let it go, to stop dictating the how. He said the how is not your concern. The instant you demand to know the exact route by which your good must arrive, you have strangled it, because you have told the infinite it may only come through the one narrow door your fear can imagine. The desire is a seed. Your endless supervising is the child who digs it up every morning to check whether it has grown. So the mystic and the psychologist say the same quiet thing. What you long for does not come by force, it comes by trust. Not the trust that does nothing, but the trust that acts, and then, having acted, unclenches and lets the current carry the boat. So here is the sentence that will not feel good to hear. Your expectations are not helping you get what you want. They are the exact shape of your refusal to receive it. Because an expectation is a demand that the future match a picture drawn by the part of you that was most afraid. And life, the real, living, unrepeatable thing, almost never matches the picture. It brings something adjacent, something stranger, often better, rarely on time, never in the packaging you specified. And the mind that is gripping its picture cannot see the gift, because the gift does not look like the plan. So you push away the actual river while grieving for the imaginary one. You stand in an arriving good and call it a failure because it used the wrong door. This is why the advice never lands. Just let go, just surrender, just trust the process. You have heard it 1,000 times and it has never once worked because it is aimed at the wrong part of you. The letting go they describe is being asked of the controller, and you cannot control your way into surrender. Deciding to let go is still the fist, now clenched around the idea of an open hand. Trying to stop trying is still trying. This is the knot at the centre of it, the one the managing mind can never untie, because the mind doing the untying is the knot itself. Look at the machinery, because it is subtle. Expectation turns hope into a contract, and every contract can be breached. So now your own longing becomes a source of dread. You are afraid of the very thing you want, because you have tied it to a specific outcome, and outcomes can be lost. Control turns the whole unlived future into a threat, because everything you cannot command which is nearly everything, becomes a risk to be managed. You wanted to feel safe on the water. Instead, you built a life spent bracing against a river that was only ever trying to carry you. And the demand to know how, the insistence on the route, keeps you forever a step outside your own life, auditing it, checking the seed, measuring the moment against the ghost, never once simply floating in the good that is actually here. The one who must know how the story ends can never be inside any of its pages. And some part of you already knows this. Some part suspects the grip is the problem, and still cannot open the hand, because to the boy inside you, letting go of the river still means watching the boat be taken. Surrender still wears the face of that first loss. Of course you resist. To unclench feels like agreeing in advance to be hurt again. For most people who live this way, the hand does not open by choice. It is opened by exhaustion. The mystics called it the dark night of the soul, and Jung called it the necessary death that every real becoming requires. It comes when the plan finally meets a thing it cannot bend, a door that will not open no matter how hard you pull, a loss that will not be argued with, a morning when you wake with nothing left to steer with, and the oar at last slips from your hands, and the terror in that moment is total because the grip has always believed that it alone was keeping you afloat. To stop steering feels certain to be the end. But watch closely because this is where everything turns. You let go of the oar because there is no strength left to hold it, and the boat does not sink. The current, the one you fought for so many years, simply takes the weight you could not carry and begins gently to move you. What is dying here is not you. It is the one who believed the whole river was his to command. And as he dies, you notice, almost in disbelief, that the water was going your way the entire time. And now the pivotal thing, the small paper boat, the one you clutched to your chest for a lifetime, the one carrying the light of everything you have ever truly wanted. You finally set it down on the water. Not thrown away, set down. Released to a current wiser than your fear, and it does not vanish. It floats. It begins, at its own pace by its own route, to travel toward the sea it was always meant for. You could not carry it there. You could only stop clutching it and let the river do what rivers do. There is an old truth the forcing mind never believes until forcing itself has failed. You were never the one moving the river. You were something the river was moving. The life you wanted was never a destination you had to seize. It was a current you had to stop fighting. Watts said the meaning of the music is not the final chord, and the meaning of the dance is not to reach a certain spot on the floor. The point was always the flowing itself, the thing you kept sacrificing in your hurry to arrive. And the strange grace hidden in the whole design is this. The desire you released was not lost by the releasing. It was finally set free to find you. What is yours does not need to be gripped. It needs to be allowed. The boy who learned to dam the stream did a wise thing to survive a world that once took what he loved. And that boy, grown now, does not have to hold the river any more. He can raise his sail and lower his hands and let the deep current carry both him and his small bright boat toward the sea, which was the whole time exactly where he was longing to go. So if you are the one who grips, this is not one more thing to master, not a surrender to achieve by force, which would only be the fist again, wearing the mask of peace. Only this. The next time you feel yourself tightening, steering, demanding that life arrive by the one narrow route your fear has drawn, notice the hands. Do not force them open, only let them be seen. The opening will come the way the current comes, the way the boat finds the sea, the way the wanted thing arrives. The moment you stop blocking the door, you are sure it had to use, on its own, quietly, the instant you stop pushing the river. You can let it flow now. It was always going to carry you. It was only the holding on that ever felt like drowning.